Calisthenic guys have been memed as the people who skip leg day, but why does it seem that we have the smallest legs as compared to all the other athletes? Let me explain why. Okay, let me first explain the three different types of calisthenic athletes. We have the freestylers, the people who generally focus on freestyle calisthenics. So for example, 360 muscle ups, 360 skills, usually exercises that transition from one move to another. And then we have the bodybuilder types like Austin Dunham, people who generally use calisthenics as a form to get in shape and to build muscle like myself. And lastly, we have the gymnast-like calisthenic people who generally focus on skills. So front levers, back levers, and usually these type of people do correlate with freestyle as well. Now the reason on why these three different type of calisthenic people matter is because of priority. A lot of these athletes have different goals, right? Not all of us are trying to build muscle, not all of us are trying to freestyle, and not all of us are trying to be a master at skills like front levers. And that's the biggest reason of why a lot of us don't have huge legs, because generally the people that freestyle, most of them don't really do legs. None of them are prioritizing squats, or if at the most, they're only doing bodyweight squats. The intensity is not near enough to even stimulate any kind of muscle hypertrophy. In comparison though, the bodybuilder types, the people who actually program exercises to maximize muscle hypertrophy through the use of external resistance, right? Or the people that hybrid training, those are the people that are actually trying to maximize muscle hypertrophy for their legs. But of course, for the gymnasts, those guys are jacked as shit. They do everything. Okay, they're Olympian style training. They do everything. They're like gods to us, right? So the first reason just comes down to priority. A lot of us aren't trying to get huge legs. Our style of training is very different to traditional weightlifting. The variables that we manipulate in our training is kind of different to weightlifting. Though we still manipulate tempo, we do progressive overload, we change the amount of weight that we lift, but the style of training that we do is different. Many of our training exercises are not the same, unless we're hybriding. If you're not going to the gym and doing barbell back squats, you're not maximizing the potential for yourself to actually build muscle for your legs. But let's get into the second point. As I mentioned previously, the workout intensity for a lot of these calisthenic guys are just way too low. Either we're working with weight that is just way too low. You can't expect to build big legs with body weight exercises. The intensity and the difficulty of the session as a whole is not near enough to stimulate any kind of growth. It's too easy. Unless you're doing a whole ton of volume, right? You're doing 50, 100 reps. Even by doing that amount of reps, it's still very difficult to build muscle doing it that way. That's why a lot of us turn to heavy weight. For one, high reps for low weight is extremely fatiguing mentally. But when we change it up and switch it entirely, once we start using heavy weight for low reps, that becomes a lot more manageable. There is still mental fatigue there, but it's a lot easier to do than high reps. High reps, you get to a certain point where like, okay, I can keep going, but your mind is playing tricks on you. You can actually do more than you actually think. With heavy weight, there's a certain limitation there. You get to a point where like, maybe I can squeeze in a little bit more reps, but you're not really sure. And that's where you just go completely berserk and you squeeze out as much reps as you can. You train a failure. And that's why people say hybriding is probably the best form of exercise. You do calisthenics and then you do weighted calisthenics and also some form of weightlifting in that program as a whole as well. That will create the perfect structure for building the perfect you. And that's with me personally. As I've gotten more experience with calisthenics, I'm creating more sessions with more weightlifting exercises and more sessions with heavier weight. Now that leads me to my second point, is the fact that a lot of people that train weighted calisthenics for their upper body is not matching the same amount of weight for their legs. For example, I was watching a Bar Brothers video, and this is no disrespect to Bar Brothers, I love those guys. They're the reason why I actually started training calisthenics. But one big thing is that we're not using the same amount of weight for our legs. So you'll see in a clip of even myself where I'm dipping like 75 kg, but we're not using the same amount of weight for our legs. In fact, we should actually be using more weight for our legs, right, to keep up. If you guys watch a lot of anime, I think the anime is called The Mightiest Disciple, or The World's Strongest Disciple, Kenichi. I can't remember who, but one of the masters mentioned that the legs are 3 times stronger than your arms. Now, if that fact is true, then that means that our legs should be trained harder, right, at a more difficult intensity than our upper body in order to stimulate the same amount of hypertrophy. Our legs should be pushed harder. We use them every single day. With my training, for example, on a good hypertrophy day, my range for dips is probably around 45 to 50 kg for 6 to 12 reps, and that's me actually pushing, working towards close to failure, right? I have to do that same amount of weight for my legs. Now, of course, that same amount of weight for my legs is relatively easy. That's why a lot of people push more weight with their legs. That's just common knowledge. So that's another reason why we aren't matching the intensity for our legs. The amount of weight that we use for our upper body is much more than what we use for our legs. And that's a big thing as well. But of course it makes sense. We don't go to the gym and we don't have a barbell that we're able to place on our back or place on our front and place a ton of plates on each side and to do a squat. For many of us, we don't prefer that style of training. And that's completely okay, but that is another reason of why our legs just aren't as optimal as they could be in our form of training. Now the next reason is because either our frequency or our volume is just way too low. Either the amount of times that we train our legs throughout the week is just not enough, right? Some of us are still sticking to one leg workout throughout the week. All the leg workouts that we do, we're not doing enough sets, we're not doing enough, pretty much. And to add on to this, the selection of leg exercises that we're doing are just way too easy as well. Bodyweight squats for 50 reps are not gonna cut it. No matter how strong you get, trying to progressively overload leg exercises are extremely difficult, especially if they're body weight. Let's say, for example, that I am able to build my legs at first as a beginner. I do 50 reps of squats as one set. Then as I get stronger throughout the weeks, I increase that eventually to 100. What are you going to do? You're going to build that all the way to 1,000 reps. That is not optimal. That is not the best way to build your legs. For my current split right now, I've changed between one leg workout a week and 2 leg workouts a week. When I do upper body lower split, I do legs twice. When I do push-pull legs, I don't do legs twice. And that's because my singular leg session has a ton of volume. I do at least 15 to 20 sets within that single session. It is possible to maximize muscle hypertrophy through just one leg workout. Now let's talk a bit about calves. Calf development has a lot to do with genetics. Simply, the insertions of your muscles, of your calves, are going to be different from person to person. Some people tend to have high insertions, some people tend to have low insertions. And then generally we also see big people have big calves even though they don't train calves at all. So that's another thing when people say, oh man, you have small calves. But they don't factor in that genetics does play a role to a certain extent, though it shouldn't deter or demotivate you from training calves. But that's another thing that people don't factor in as well, is that a lot of people with big calves don't really train calves. We see rugby players, we see sprinters, marathon runners. They're not actively doing calf exercises to build big calves. That's just a byproduct of their daily training. People need to understand that simply doing squats targets the calves. How do we actually train the hamstrings? We do so by eccentrically overloading the muscle, by stretching the muscle. The same thing is with calves. Though there is some benefit to training calves through isolation, i.e. calf raises or the machines. But overall, people who have big calves don't really train calves. Now the last one isn't a factor of why we have small legs, but the last one is that people need to stay in their own lanes. People tend to care way too much about what other people think of them. We on social media as a community browse through all these videos, these Instagram posts, and we see and we comment, or people comment on us and they're like, bro, where are your calves? Bro, your belly's big. No one really cares. Everyone always has something to say about you if you're doing something. So at the end of the day, continue working on yourself, man. If you don't want to train legs, you don't want to train legs. Okay, now this doesn't mean that I'm encouraging your behavior to skip legs or to avoid legs entirely, but I'm just saying, people will always have something to say about you. Your height, the way you look, the way you feel, everything. A lot of us won't have the same goals. A lot of us tend to want to look a different kind of way. A lot of us just don't want to do the same things as other people. But I digress. At the end of the day, stick to your own goal, stick to what you want to do, and as long as you're happy, nothing else really matters, right? But yeah, if you guys have any concerns of anything that I've said in this video, or you want to debate anything that I've said, let me know in the comments. I am always keen to talk about something with you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found some type of value or usefulness in this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.